Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Now, this is one I'm actually pretty excited about. We've done some theory crafting, and I've come up with something that I haven't seen anywhere yet or seen any videos on. So I wanted to share it with you guys. First of which is going to be the most unorthodox thing that you could possibly think of when it comes to maximizing your burst, and that's running the on-use health buff trinket from PvP. Now, this build, let me preface this whole thing. This build is not something that I think is necessarily going to be good all the time. However, I think it is going to have its use cases in maybe content that you're over geared for, or content where you need really high single target burst, maybe like mythic content where you're doing bosses and things like that, and you're trying to maximize your actual boss damage. This is a setup that is actually going to work for that. It's very high single target, and it's very high fast DPS in a small burst window, maximizing like a 30-second window. You really just pump a ton of damage. So with that being said, there's a few things that are kind of the prerequisites to making this build work to this capacity. You can play variations of this and you can run different talents, but this is the way I've found to make our Tyrant as potent as possible in that first cast, basically on a 2-minute cooldown. Summon Vile Fiend, Grimoire, Felguard, and Demonic Consumption. Really the talents here that make this setup. Everything else you could kind of run whatever if you want different talents. These are the three though that really make this build. Now, like I had mentioned, the on-use PvP bonus health trinket is going to be what we're using to maximize our minions' health, which then in turn gives us damage from demonic consumption. Now, the second trinket, I have Wakener's Frond. You can use really anything here. Another option that I've used a bunch is the on-use PvP trinket. This is a 1-minute cooldown, and I end up, 1-minute cooldown, and I end up pairing that with my demonic strength. So that's an option as well. But if you can find a really strong int or haste trinket on a 2-minute cooldown, it will pair very well. Something that a lot of people don't know or understand is that your Tyrant does not snapshot like a lot of abilities in the game, and like you would kind of think it would. The Tyrant is damage, and his attack speed, his haste, his cast speed is based on your current stats. So it acts as an extension of your current stats. So what you end up wanting to do is cast your Tyrant and then pop all of your on-use stuff, haste trinkets, int trinkets, blood fury, things like that, right? You want to stack all of these things after your Tyrant's up so that you're buffing as much as possible during its 15-second duration. Now, what we're going to be doing is basically pre-casting this trinket, which is going to put our DPS trinket on a 20-second cooldown while we have this health buff. But this actually works out perfectly because we can basically be summoning our minions with this bonus health buff, and then when our Tyrant's active and this health bonus has fallen off, we pop our DPS trinket while our Tyrant is up. So we're getting bonus DPS from all of the increased health pool of our minions prior to leading up to our Tyrant. Then when we cast our Tyrant, we pop things like Blood Fury and our on-use trinket for maximizing the DPS of the Tyrant. So it's going to get bonus damage from demonic consumption and then bonus damage from us and our individual stats while it's active. So we're basically making a defensive trinket an offensive trinket because we're pre-casting it in our setup. Now, the last thing to mention here is I'm Necrolord. If you guys are not like Necrolord, you can still do this whole setup. It's just going to be slightly less potent. Main reason being is we're using the second Soulbind tree. I know this is slightly cut off the screen for you guys, and I apologize for that. But it's the lead by example, the Ameni Soulbind tree. Now, the big thing to mention here is we have lead by example, which is going to give our decimating bolt an int buff to us, depending on how many people are around us for a short period of time. We also end up stacking this with our Tyrant as well. And then we have Ameni's Magnificent Skin. This is a 5% health bonus for 30 seconds. This pairs nicely with that PvP trinket. And when I pop all these together, you'll see here shortly, we have around 43,000 health while we're going into our opener here with this build. When it comes to conduits, you could really run kind of anything. None of these are make or break, but I've been running Wilfrid's as my legendary, and I'm a big fan of Tyrant Soul in combination with Wilfrid's. It's a really fun play style to me. I don't think it's necessarily the best or the highest DPS all the time, but I really enjoy it, so that's what I've been playing a lot, and I'm trying to kind of figure out ways to min-max that specific play style a little bit. Thus, we came up with this build. Now, the last thing to mention here is that with Wilfrid's, right? You could also run, for example, the Horned Nightmare Legendary is also a viable option if that's one. I know a lot of people have been running that. It's very, very good. Don't let me make you think that that's not a viable option. It's very, very strong, especially in the opener. If you can get this to proc and you have a bonus 3 imps that you get in the opener will make this even more potent than what I'm playing right now. But the thing that's really cool with this Wilfrid's build is that this gets our Tyrant down to about a 1 minute cooldown. And what that means is that our Grimoire Felguard, Blood Fury, and if we have a 2 minute on use DPS trinket, not to mention the health trinket is basically on a 2 minute cooldown as well, we have basically a big 2 minute window. And then we can get, if we play well, we can get basically a 1 minute Tyrant and basically have a free Tyrant in between that 2 minute window. You end up having to hold out on your Grimoire Felguard in this 2 minute thing a little bit. So it's probably like a 2 minute 10, 2 minute 15 second kind of window. But it's very potent and it's a very fun play style. And really, I think has a pretty high skill cap to manage well. One thing that makes this setup a little bit clunky is Summon Vile Fiend. Unfortunately, I've tried From the Shadows with this setup, and I can't quite make it work and be as strong. You just need to be aware of it. You technically can fit a Summon Vile Fiend in between as well, and basically you hold the Summon Vile Fiend for when you're going to use your Grimoire Felguard again, and you can kind of use this at your discretion. If you want to hold it for the second Tyrant before the third Tyrant, you can do that. I have to play with it a little bit, and it's going to be kind of contingent on, you know, the fight and scenario and things like that. I have found something I do want to mention with this is if you're not running Summon Vile Fiend, it's actually a little bit easier to reduce the time on your Tyrant, getting it closer to this 2 minute window, because Summon Vile Fiend being a 1.7 second cast and only spending 1 shard is not very efficient when we're talking about spending shards and trying to reduce our Tyrant down as much as possible. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. That's a video for another time. But my point being here is that if you're playing well around this Wilfrid's Legendary, you can basically be having 1 minute Tyrants, and then every other Tyrant, you have this big window pairing it with Grimoire Felguard, any of your on-use trinkets, Blood Fury if you're an Orc, and things like that. So this caters to a really cool 1 minute, 2 minute, kind of alternating big burst cooldown that I think is going to be really fun and allow for a pretty high skill cap if you manage all of these cooldowns well and efficiently. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and go into this build. Now I have this kind of precast setup is basically assuming a 10-second counter, like a pool timer, I should say, which all of this actually lines up very well. What I have here is a macro that's going to cast Fleshcraft and use our on-use defensive trinket at the same time. Like I said, this is going to put our offensive trinket on a 20-second cooldown. We're going to finish the full channel of Fleshcraft, which is I think it's a 4-second cast. Yeah. Then once we do that, we're going to hard cast 1 Demon Bolt. This is going to bring us to 5 shards. And then we're going to cast 1 full Hand of Gul'dan. That's going to bring us down to 2 shards. To cast our Grimoire Felguard, which it's right here, but it's not showing for some reason, our Vile Fiend and our Dreadstalkers is going to take 4 shards. So after that initial Hand of Gul'dan, we're going to go 2 Shadow Bolts to get back to 4 shards. We're going to cast Felguard first, then summon Vile Fiend, then Dreadstalkers. Then we're going to be casting a Tyrant right after that. Now, if you get a Demonic Calling proc between that first Demon Bolt or those first 2 Shadow Bolts, and this is instant cast, you're going to be left with 2 shards. What you can do is you can either just go straight into your Tyrant and ignore it, which is one option. You can also cast a second 2 shard Hand of Gul'dan. That's going to be up to you. I'm not sure which one is the better option of those 2. I would guess that just casting your Tyrant immediately is going to be better, because that should be enough time to be able to catch the first imps from your first hand in that Tyrant extension and pool the health from them. But it's going to be up to you. You also end up kind of having a little bit of a clunky timer. If this is instant cast, you're like a second too early because you're getting an instant cast here instead of a hard cast. So again, let's recap that. I'm going to Fleshcraft, defensive trinket. Once the channel finishes, we're going to hard cast 1 Demon Bolt, getting us to 5 shards. I'm going to Hand of Gul'dan, getting us down to 2 shards. We're going to cast 2 Shadow Bolts to get up to 4. Then we're going to Grimoire Felguard, Vile Fiend, Dreadstalkers into Tyrant. Now, once our Tyrant's up, this is where it gets really important that you do this stuff in the right sequence. I have a macro here that's casting Demonic Strength, Blood Fury, as well as my on-use DPS Trinket. I cast these first as Blood Fury is 15 seconds, so I want to increase the intellect of my minion, of my Tyrant, for the entire 15 seconds. Then after I cast this macro here with the Demonic Strength and our on-use, 2-minute on-use items, I cast Decimating Bolt. The Decimating Intellect bonus is only a 7-second buff, 7 or 8-second buff, I believe. So it's actually shorter. So if you do this during your, once your Tyrant's up and once you've casted all your other stuff, this will still fit within that window. If you cast Decimating Bolt first, you end up actually pushing these back a couple seconds and it's not efficient. So the most efficient way to do it is go Tyrant into your on-use, Blood Fury, on-use trinkets, and I have this macroed in with Demonic Strength. Then I cast Decimating Bolt. One thing you could potentially do is macro those things into your Decimating Bolt cast. However, if you're chaining these things very fast, it can get a little bit finicky with how it batches. It will cast Decimating Bolt but not use your racial and your on-use trinket. So I found pairing this with Demonic Strength is the best. Not to mention, you have plenty of time left over. Decimating Bolt, the intellect bonus finishes before your Tyrant's done anyway, so no harm, no foul. It still all fits in. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this here and see. Hopefully we don't mess it up. So I have the macro, but I didn't use it right there. But we're gonna go ahead and hard cast our Demon Bolt here. I'll send my pet in. We're going to go Hand of Gul'dan, Shadow Bolt, Grimoire Felguard, Vile Fiend, Dreadstalkers, Tyrant. Okay, then we Demonic Strength, all our cooldowns, Hand of Gul'dan, and then we go into our normal rotation there. Okay, so that's the full rotation. Now the DPS meters are a little bit off the screen here, but you see, we get up to about 5k single target. Keep in mind, this is no Bloodlust. This is no int bonus, no flask, no potions, nothing like that. You can pop, obviously, a potion in this opener to maximize. If you have Bloodlust, it's going to be even crazier. Now, a couple things here to mention, to point out, is our Tyrant did 57,000 damage. The normal bolts with this setup, as you can see here, are hitting for 5,200 per normal, what's it called, demon fire, or whatever it's called, the cast it does. It crit twice for 10k, over 10k. Now the big thing here to mention is that if you see the hits at the top right corner, it got 9 casts off. This scales with your haste. If I do not use the on haste trinket with me with my current gear, I'm getting 8 casts off. So you can use an on-use intellect trinket. However, it's important to understand, I'm not exactly sure what the breaking points are when it comes to the haste and how many casts it fits in its window. But if you went with a on-use int trinket, for example, instead of this haste bonus trinket, there's a chance you're only going to have 8 hits occurring when you look at the top right corner here from your Tyrant. It's important to understand all those things because there's going to be different breaking points, and it's not something I can tell you for sure what that number is. I think it's pretty close to 600-ish haste, but I don't know that for sure. So, all that being said, I've gotten this up to around 60k, I think 62k, but you can see here it's pretty nuts. What we end up doing is having this massively strong demonic Tyrant during this window, and it's going to be very, very good. Like I said, if you have Bloodlust and things like that going, I'm pretty sure this could get up to 12 casts, so it's absolutely insane. So keep that in mind as you scale with better gear. We have more health on our gear. This is going to keep scaling with us indefinitely throughout the expansion, which is really exciting as it's going to give us one option for a really, really strong single target burst setup. Now I'll do the rotation one more time just to show you guys. Oh yeah, I have my Fleshcraft macro right here. So let me pull my Felguard out. We're going to drop combat here so that our damage meter will reset so that you guys can see, like I said, we had this first one here, 57k. To put it in perspective, if I don't do this setup, the Tyrant does 30k. So it's basically a 50% damage increase on our Tyrant doing this whole weird orchestrated setup. So, we're going to pop our macro here. Ready, set, go. We're going to hard cast Demon Bolt. Once this finishes, with a second left, I'm going to send my pet in. Hand of Gul'dan, Shadow Bolt, Grimoire Felguard, Vile Fiend, Dreadstalkers. I'm going to go straight into the Tyrant there. Big damage cooldown, Decimating Bolt, Hand to Gul'dan, Shadow Bolt, Hand to Gul'dan, and we go into our rotation. Now, another thing I probably would also do with this setup is create a weak aura showing the health bonus falling off of the trinket, something big and obvious. That's a pretty simple weak aura to set up, but you can do that to track it. Make it a little bit easier just to make sure you don't accidentally overlap, because if you do have that health bonus up, if you time this differently, or maybe you have a little bit less or a little more haste than I do, it won't let you cast your DPS trinket while you have the bonus health from the PvP trinket. So it's important to understand that. Again, 57,000, almost identical. I think it is identical to the time before. You can see we're off like a few damage per cast here, but you get the idea, right? So this is the best way I've found to maximize the DPS of our Tyrant, giving us a ton of burst in that small window with minimal setup. You only need a 10-second pull timer to pull this off. And I'm really looking forward to testing this out in some Mythic Pluses, trying to see how much boss damage we can actually do with this setup. Let me know if you guys have had any luck with any kind of crazy, weird theory crafting ideas. This is about the weirdest one that I've been able to come up with so far, being able to use this on-use health trinket. Pretty nuts. One other thing I do want to mention is that the health bonus increase from this as it scales up in eye level is pretty significant. So I think this is going to be able to be an option for us all the way throughout the expansion. While it might not be optimal if you have a second very strong, DPS trinket, this has passive intellect on it. So in that sense, it's great. And this does scale very well with this big 2-minute burst window. So like always, guys, let me know if you have questions down below. Feel free to hit that subscribe button if you want to catch any of the live streams and the arena games or the raids, anything like that. Or if you guys have any questions, live streams are definitely the best place to come and ask them. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.